Chapter 1. I sold my house without telling my sister who was living in it, walked away from my father's company that depended on me, and within 4 months, his firm lost nearly 40% of its revenue. My name is Caroline Whitmore, and the night my father threatened my career in front of my golden child sister was the night he realized I was no longer the obedient daughter financing their chaos. What they did not understand was that I had already signed the papers, already closed the deal, and already planned my exit while they were still trying to guilt me into staying. This is the story of how family pressure, humiliation, and control pushed me to choose peace over loyalty, and how that choice changed everything. The first thing my father said that night was that family needed unity, and he said it the way a CEO announces a restructuring plan, calm, rehearsed, and completely indifferent to who it might hurt. We were sitting in this dining room of his house in Franklin, Tennessee, the one he bought in 2018 when Crestline Custom Interiors hit its highest annual revenue. The chandelier above us cast a soft amber light over the polished table, over the crystal glasses, over my older sister Madison, who was pretending to study the label on her wine, as if she were a guest instead of the reason we were all there. Madison had been living back with Dad since July. She had not planned to. None of us had. But her divorce finalized in late June, and within 3 weeks, she was standing in the driveway of my house with 2 suitcases and a story about betrayal and temporary hardship. Temporary stretched into arguments, into unpaid bills, into her being escorted out of my home when I finally sold it. Now she sat across from me in a navy silk blouse, hair perfectly styled, face composed. She looked fragile only when it benefited her. Dad folded his hands on the table and looked at me the way he looked at quarterly reports. "Emily," he said, "this is not how we handle things. You blindsided your sister." I kept my shoulders straight. I am 35 years old, director of client development at the company he founded in 2001, and I have negotiated contracts worth more than this house. I was not going to crumble at a dinner table. I did not blindside anyone I said. I protected myself. Madison let out a small laugh that sounded almost sympathetic. "You changed the locks while I was out of town. That is not protecting yourself. That is dramatic." Dad shifted his gaze to her, softening. "She's going through enough. The least you could have done was show compassion." Compassion. I thought about the $10,200 she had charged to the supplementary card I had given her for groceries and basic expenses. I thought about the weekend parties in my living room, the repainting of my guest room without my consent, the way she introduced my house as our place on social media. "I showed compassion for 3 months," I said. "I asked for boundaries. I asked for rent. I asked for basic respect." Dad exhaled slowly, as if I were a difficult client. "You are making this bigger than it needs to be. Family sticks together. Crestline is built on that principle. We do not air our issues publicly." There it was. The company, the image, the brand. He leaned back in his chair and continued, "I have already had 2 calls this week asking why my own daughter forced her sister out. It does not look good, Emily. It makes you look unstable." I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, the same one I had felt in conference rooms when he would correct me in front of managers to assert control. Unstable was a word he used carefully, not loud enough to be slander, but sharp enough to sting. "Are you saying this affects my job?" I asked. He held my gaze. "I am saying that leadership requires judgment. If clients begin to question your stability, I have to consider what is best for the company." Madison looked down at her plate as if she did not want to witness this. She always knew when to look wounded. I understood exactly what he was doing. He was not threatening to fire me outright. He was reminding me that in our regional network of interior design firms, suppliers and contractors, his opinion carried weight. If he chose to describe me as volatile or difficult, doors would quietly close. I set my fork down. "I have accepted a position in Santa Monica," I said. Both of them looked up. "I start in September as Senior Director of Strategy at Alder & Pierce Design Group." Madison blinked first. That is across the country. Dad let out a short laugh. You cannot be serious. You are reacting. You always do this when you feel cornered. I did not react. I interviewed in May. I signed the offer in July. The salary is $148,000 a year. It is more than I make here. He stared at me as if I had spoken in another language. You did this without consulting me. I do not work for you forever, I said. I work for a company, and that company will be fine without me. His jaw tightened. You think you can just walk away? From family, from everything we built? I already did, I said quietly. The house on Oak Ridge Drive is sold. Closing was last Thursday. The room went still. Even the hum of the refrigerator in the adjacent kitchen seemed louder. Madison shook her head slowly. You are lying. It was a cash deal. $685,000. I purchased it in 2020 in my name alone. I refinanced in 2022. I consulted a real estate attorney before listing it. There was no legal claim against it. Dad's face changed then, not to anger, but to calculation. When did you sign? Mid-July. 8-day close. And you did not think to mention this. I had nothing to discuss. It was my property. Madison's composure cracked. You made me look homeless. Do you understand that? I came back from Charleston, and there was a stranger in the driveway. You had 30 days' notice that I was listing, I said. I emailed you the timeline. You chose to ignore it. She turned to Dad. She is doing this to punish me. Dad's eyes stayed on me. This is impulsive. You are jeopardizing your career over pride. My career is not tied to this table, I said, and it is not tied to your approval. For a moment, I saw something flicker across his face. Not sadness, not regret, fear of losing control. You owe your sister support, he said finally. She is blood. Blood does not make someone entitled to my mortgage, I replied. The words landed heavier than I expected. I did not raise my voice. I did not slam my hand on the table. I simply said them and let them exist. Dad leaned forward. If you walk away from this family in this way, do not expect me to protect you professionally. The Nashville design community is small. There it was plain and clean. I met his eyes. I am not asking for protection. Silence stretched between us. Madison's breathing was shallow. Dad's fingers tapped lightly against the table, the only sign that he had not anticipated this. You are making a mistake, he said. Maybe I answered, but it is mine to make. I pushed my chair back slowly and stood. My heart was pounding, but my voice remained steady. I did not look at Madison. I did not offer reassurance. I had spent too many years doing that. As I walked toward the front door, Dad spoke again, softer this time. You will regret leaving like this. I paused with my hand on the knob. Maybe, but I will not regret choosing myself. The night air outside was humid, thick with late summer heat. I stepped onto the porch and closed the door behind me. Through the glass, I could see them still sitting at the table, frozen in the version of the story where I was the unreasonable one. They did not believe the house was sold. They did not believe I would leave. They thought this was another argument that would dissolve into apology by morning. I walked down the driveway toward my car, feeling something shift inside me. Not triumph, not anger, just a quiet recalibration. For the first time in my life, the power dynamic had tilted, and I had not asked permission for it to move. Chapter 2. Back in March, none of it felt like a shift in power. It felt like an obligation. My sister Lillian called me on a Tuesday night just after 11. I was still at my kitchen table in Charlotte, North Carolina, laptop open, reviewing client projections for Whitmore Design Collective, the firm my father, Thomas Whitmore, had built from a 2-person studio in 2002 into a regional name. Her voice was raw, almost unrecognizable. It is final, she said. The divorce papers were signed today. I sat back in my chair. I knew things had been unraveling between her and her husband, but I had not expected it to collapse so completely. "Are you okay?" I asked. She laughed softly, a sound that did not match the word okay. "I have $42,000 in credit card debt, no savings, and the house goes to him." "What do you think?" I felt the familiar tightening in my chest, the instinct to step in and fix. Lillian was 3 years older than me, but she had always lived as if the world would cushion her fall. I had learned to land on my own. "Where are you staying?" I asked. There was a pause. "That is why I am calling." The next morning, my father called before I could return Lillian's texts. "You need to let your sister stay with you for a few weeks," he said. "She is not in a good place." "For how long?" I asked. "A few weeks," he repeated. "Do not overcomplicate this. Family shows up. I should have insisted on terms. I should have drafted something simple, even symbolic. Instead, I said fine. I had a guest room. I had space. I believed in temporary." Lillian arrived with 2 suitcases, 3 garment bags, and a story about starting over. She hugged me tightly in my driveway, tears staining my blouse. "I will not be a burden," she said. "I just need time to breathe." There was no lease, no rent, no timeline on paper, just trust. The first week was quiet. She stayed in the guest room, ordered takeout, cried in private. I brought home groceries and told myself this was what sisters did. The second week, she asked if she could use the supplementary card I kept for household expenses. "Just for basics," she said. "I do not want to keep asking you for cash." I hesitated, then handed it over. Within 12 days, the charges totaled $8,750. When I called her into the kitchen and placed the printed statement on the counter, she barely looked at it. "It is just temporary," she said. "I needed clothes for interviews. I needed to feel normal." "You spent $2,000 at a boutique in South Park," I said. "That is not groceries." She crossed her arms. "You have a 6-figure salary. Why are you acting like this is going to bankrupt you?" "It is not about bankruptcy. It is about boundaries." She rolled her eyes at that word as if it were something pretentious I had picked up from a podcast. Things escalated quietly after that. One Saturday, I came home to find the living room rearranged. The pale gray accent wall I had chosen carefully in 2020 was now a warm beige I did not recognize. "What happened here?" I asked. Lillian stood on a step stool, brush in hand. I could not stand that cold color anymore. It felt depressing. "You did not think to ask me." She climbed down, irritated. "It is just paint. You are acting like I knocked down a wall." That night, there were people in my kitchen I had never met. Wine glasses lined the counter. Someone had placed a Bluetooth speaker on my bookshelf. "I thought you were going out," I said. "Plans changed," she replied, as if that explained strangers in my home. On social media, she posted photos from my back patio with captions about her new chapter. "Our house feels like fresh air." I stared at the words long enough to feel something shift inside me. By mid-April, I canceled the supplementary card. I did it online during a lunch break between client calls. When Lillian found out, she stormed into my home office. "You humiliated me at the salon today," she said. My card declined. "I did not humiliate you. I ended access. You are my sister." "Yes," I said. "Not my dependent." She called my father within the hour. That evening, he phoned me. "What are you doing?" he demanded. "I am stopping the bleeding." "It is money, Caroline. You cannot nickel and dime your own sister." "It is my money," I replied, and she agreed it was temporary. He sighed heavily. "She is fragile. Do you really want to be the reason she falls apart?" There it was. Responsibility shifted onto me. By May, the phone calls began. My Aunt Deborah left a voicemail saying family does not keep score. A cousin texted me that Lillian felt unsafe in her own sister's house. Unsafe. I replayed that word more than once. At Sunday dinner at my father's house, conversations quieted when I entered. Lillian told a story about feeling displaced, and I noticed no one asked how I felt hosting her. "You are strong," my aunt said. "You can handle this." She cannot. Strength, I learned, was a liability. It meant I did not get to say no. June brought the moment that crystallized everything. My father asked me to step into the glass conference room at Whitmore Design Collective. The walls were transparent, the blinds half open. Our chief financial officer, Rachel Kim, and our HR manager, Melissa Grant, were already seated. He did not lower his voice. "I am concerned about your judgment," he said. "There have been complaints. Complaints from who? From within the family. You are creating instability. Clients notice when leadership is distracted." Rachel avoided my eyes. Melissa stared at her notebook. "Are you discussing my personal housing situation in relation to my performance?" I asked. He leaned forward. "Leadership requires composure. If you cannot support your own sister through a difficult period, what message does that send? It sends that I have boundaries." He gave a thin smile. That word again. The room felt smaller than it was. Employees passed by outside the glass, able to see us, not hear us. I realized this was not a private correction. It was a display. "We need to present unity," he said. "I will not have family drama undermining this firm." Something inside me cooled. "I am meeting all performance targets," I said. "Revenue is up 9% in my portfolio. There are no client complaints." "This is about culture," he replied. Culture. A word flexible enough to mean whatever he needed it to mean. I did not argue further. I nodded once, stood, and walked out of the room with my back straight. That afternoon, I forwarded every client contract to my personal encrypted drive. I archived emails. I documented dates of conversations, not because I intended to sue anyone, but because I needed clarity. Guilt tripping is effective when it stays emotional. It loses power when it is written down. At home, Lillian was on the couch scrolling through her phone when I came in. "Did Dad talk to you?" she asked casually. "Yes." "Good. Maybe now you will stop acting like I am a tenant." I looked at her for a long moment. "Maybe I am done acting like I am your safety net." She scoffed, but I could see the flicker of unease. That night, I sat in my bedroom and typed a message to an old college friend who had become one of the most efficient real estate agents in Mecklenburg County. "Are you available to talk about a fast listing I wrote to Maya Torres?" Her reply came within minutes. "Always." "What are you thinking?" For the first time, I was not thinking about accommodating someone else. I was thinking about an exit. I did not feel triumphant. I felt precise. The next morning, before anyone else woke up, I began outlining a plan that did not include asking permission. Chapter 3. I did not start with the house. I started with a lawyer. 3 days after that early morning decision, I sat across from Daniel Park in a small office in downtown Charlotte. He was in his early 40s, calm, precise, the kind of attorney who read documents twice before speaking once. He flipped through the copy of my deed. "You purchased the property in 2020? "Yes." "And it has always been in your name alone?" "Yes." "No co-owner, no trust, no joint tenancy?" "No." He leaned back slightly. "Your sister has no legal claim. She is not on title. There is no lease agreement. From a property law standpoint, she is a guest." I felt something loosen in my chest. "So I can sell," I said. "You can sell," he confirmed. "You are not obligated to house an adult sibling. If you choose to list, I recommend written notice of sale and reasonable time for personal belongings to be removed. Beyond that, it is your asset." I nodded slowly. "And if my father tries to interfere?" He gave a small shrug. "He has no standing unless his name appears on a document. Does it? It does not. Then legally, this is clean." Clean. The word felt sharp and reassuring at the same time. That afternoon, I met with Maya Torres at a coffee shop in South End. She had built a reputation for fast closings with investors who paid cash and did not haggle over inspection minutiae. "You want quiet and fast," she said, reviewing the photos of my house on her tablet. "Very. You are willing to price it competitively." "I am willing to be realistic." She smiled. "That is rare." We agreed to a pre-market approach, no public listing yet. She would circulate it among her investor network first. I kept everything discreet. I took work calls in my car. I stepped outside to answer texts from Maya. The tension began almost immediately. One evening, as I stepped onto the back patio to return a call, Lillian followed me out. "Who keeps calling you from a real estate number?" she asked, arms folded. "A vendor," I said evenly. "For what?" "For something I am handling." She narrowed her eyes. "You are not selling this house, are you?" "I said I am handling something." She stared at me for a long moment, trying to read what I was not giving her. Inside the house, the beige wall she painted caught the fading light. I imagined someone else choosing a different color. A week later, my father asked to see paperwork related to the refinance I had done in 2022. "I need to review the terms," he said casually over lunch at the office. "Why?" "Because if you are in a vulnerable financial position that reflects on us." "I am not vulnerable." "Then show me the documents." "I do not share my mortgage paperwork with my employer," I replied. His expression hardened slightly. "You are being secretive." "I am being independent." He did not like that word any more than he liked boundaries. 2 days after that conversation, Maya called with an offer. $612,000 all cash, she said. The buyer can close in 8 days. No financing contingency. I stepped into an empty conference room to take the call. "Is that solid?" I asked. "As solid as it gets. His name is Martin Alvarez. He flips properties in this zip code. He has done 3 deals this year without delay." I closed my eyes briefly. The number was lower than the emotional value of the house, but higher than what I had paid. "Let us move," I said. The next week blurred into signatures and scanned documents. Daniel reviewed the purchase agreement. Everything was straightforward. "You are protected," he said. "Once funds clear, there is no reversal." I did not tell Lillian. I did not tell my father. 48 hours before closing, I logged into my bank account and permanently removed her supplementary card access. This time, I did not warn her. I also opened a new account at a different bank and transferred the majority of my savings there. I did not want any shared mailing address confusion or accidental statements arriving in the wrong hands. The night before closing, I began packing. Not everything, just what mattered. Personal files, jewelry from my grandmother, hard drives, my work laptop backups. At 1 a.m, I stood in the hallway listening to the quiet breathing from the guest room. I imagined her waking up to strangers walking through the living room. My hands trembled slightly as I taped the last box shut. I was not fearless. I was methodical. Closing day arrived hot and heavy. I signed the final documents electronically during my lunch break. By 3 p.m, the wire confirmation came through. Funds received. It was done. I drove home that evening as if nothing had changed. Lillian was on the couch watching television. "You seem tense," she said without looking at me. "Long day?" She muted the television. "You are acting strange lately." "I have a lot on my mind." "You are not doing something stupid, are you?" I looked at her carefully. "Define stupid." She frowned, but said nothing more. 2 days later, she left for Miami with friends for a weekend trip. She told me she needed sun and distraction. I did not stop her. While she was gone, I coordinated with Martin. He planned to change the locks the morning after her scheduled return. I arranged for a moving company to box and label her belongings neatly. I was not interested in cruelty. I was interested in completion. The morning of her return, I did not go to the house. I drove to the airport with a one-way ticket to Los Angeles in my purse. My phone rang as I sat at the gate. It was Lillian. I let it ring once more before answering. "Why does my key not work?" she demanded. "Because it is no longer your residence." "What are you talking about?" "I sold the house last week. The new owner changed the locks this morning." There was silence, then a sharp inhale. "You are joking." "I am not. I just got back from Miami. My bags are in the driveway. There is a man here who says he owns the property." "He does." "You cannot do this to me." "I gave you written notice that I was listing. You chose not to take it seriously." "You are vindictive." "I am practical." Her voice cracked. "Where am I supposed to go?" "You have 24 hours to collect your boxed belongings. After that, they will be placed in storage for 30 days. That is more than the law requires." "You planned this?" "Yes." She began to cry, then shifted into anger. "I will call Dad." "You can." She hung up on me. My hands shook after the call ended, not from regret, but from adrenaline. I stared at the departure board above the gate. Flights blinking, destinations shifting. I was not celebrating. There was no cinematic satisfaction, only the quiet realization that something irreversible had occurred. When my father called minutes later, I did not answer. I turned my phone to silent and looked out at the runway. By the time boarding was announced, I felt oddly calm. I walked down the jet bridge with one carry-on and a single suitcase, aware that behind me an old structure was collapsing in ways I could not yet fully see. When I took my seat by the window, I finally allowed myself to breathe. Chapter 4. The plane lifted off the runway, and Charlotte disappeared beneath a layer of cloud that looked softer than the truth I had left behind. Los Angeles in September felt unreal at first. The air in Santa Monica was warm but dry, the sky too blue, the ocean too calm. I rented a small furnished apartment 3 blocks from the beach and started my new role at Bennett Rowe Design Group the following week. For the first few days, my phone stayed quiet. Lillian sent 2 messages the night of the lock change. My father sent 1 email that said we need to talk. I did not respond to any of them. By late September, the silence began to crack. The first call came from Ryan Caldwell, a supplier I had worked with for years back in Charlotte. "I figured you should know," he said carefully. "Your dad is struggling to keep the Winston hospitality account." "What happened?" I asked, even though I already suspected. "They are concerned about continuity. They heard you left. They are reviewing alternatives." Winston Hospitality was worth $900,000 annually in custom installations. Losing it would not destroy the company overnight, but it would tear a hole in cash flow. I sat at my small kitchen counter in Santa Monica, staring at the white wall in front of me. "Thank you for telling me," I said. "You were the one they trusted," Ryan added quietly. I ended the call and felt something unfamiliar. Not satisfaction, not guilt, just confirmation. In October, another message came, this time from Amanda Lewis, the chief financial officer at Whitmore Design Collective. Her email subject line read, "Internal Review Update." I hesitated before opening it. "Caroline, I hope you are settling in well. I wanted you to hear this directly. We have initiated an internal audit due to declining revenue and inconsistent project management documentation. Since your departure, 2 major clients have requested renegotiations. Tyler Green has formally withdrawn his annual contract. Tyler Green had been a cornerstone partner for almost a decade. His firm supplied specialty materials that our competitors struggled to source. I called Amanda. "How bad is it?" I asked. She exhaled audibly. "Revenue is down 38% compared to last quarter. Your father underestimated how much client retention was tied to you." "And the audit?" "There are process gaps. documentation that only existed in your files, verbal agreements not properly archived. I closed my eyes. I archived everything before I left, I said. I know, but you were the one managing those relationships. They are not responding to anyone else. In the background, I could hear office noise, muted but tense. He is not handling it well, she added. Of course he was not. In November, my father finally left a voicemail instead of a short email. His voice sounded controlled but thinner than I remembered. Caroline, I need you to call me. We have a situation with Tyler and with the Redmond account. They are questioning continuity. If you would just speak with them, reassure them we can stabilize this. He paused. We can work something out. He did not ask how I was. He did not mention the dinner. He did not acknowledge the conference room humiliation in June. 2 days later, he called again. I let it go to voicemail. The third call came late in the evening. I was sitting on my balcony watching the lights along Ocean Avenue flicker on. This time I answered. What do you want? I asked calmly. There was no greeting. Have you spoken to Tyler Green? He said. No. You need to. He trusts you. I do not work for you anymore. This is not about employment. This is about legacy. I leaned back in my chair. You threatened my professional reputation in June. Silence. You embarrassed me in front of senior staff. We are past that, he said quickly. Right now, we are dealing with numbers. Numbers. Always numbers. If you made one call, he continued, just one we could salvage this quarter. What are you offering? I asked. He did not hesitate. I can restructure compensation. I can even reduce Lillian's stipend. She does not need that much right now. I went very still. He was willing to cut her support to bring me back into alignment. You are offering to penalize her to fix your revenue problem. I am offering to make adjustments. You did not call to apologize. This is not about apologies, he snapped. Then he caught himself. This is about the firm. There it was, clear and stripped of pretense. I am not coming back, I said. You are being stubborn. I am being consistent. You are letting the company suffer out of pride. I am letting the company face the consequences of its leadership. He exhaled sharply. You will regret burning bridges. I did not burn anything, I replied. I stepped away. He hung up without saying goodbye. I stared at my phone for a long time after that. In December, Amanda called again. He is listing the house, she said quietly. What house? The one in Myers Park. He cannot sustain the overhead. Payroll is down to 6 employees. 6? The company had peaked at 18 when I left. Is he okay? I asked before I could stop myself. He is angry. He blames market conditions. He blames staffing transitions. He does not blame himself. I imagined the house with the manicured lawn and the long driveway, the place where Sunday dinners used to feel warm before they became strategic. Thank you for telling me, I said. You built more of that company than he will ever admit, Amanda replied softly. After the call, I walked down to the beach. The Pacific was colder than it looked, waves rolling in with quiet force. I expected to feel victorious. Instead, I felt something closer to clarity. Karma had not arrived with fireworks. It had arrived with contracts not renewed, with wire transfers, not received, with spreadsheets that no longer balanced. My father sent one final email before the end of the year. Subject line: opportunity to rebuild. The body was brief. Caroline, we can reset this. The house is under contract. The firm is restructuring. If you are willing to return in a consulting capacity, we can stabilize. Let me know. No apology. No acknowledgement of how he had tried to leverage my career to control my personal life. I read it twice. Then I clicked archive. The ocean continued its rhythm beyond my apartment, steady and indifferent. For the first time, I saw my father not as a towering figure or even as an adversary, but as a man who had built his identity on control and was now discovering its limits. I did not feel joy, I felt distance, and I kept my phone on silent. Chapter 5. By January, the quiet stopped feeling defensive and started feeling intentional. Santa Monica in winter does not look like winter. The mornings were cool enough for a light jacket, the sky pale and open, the ocean stretching out without apology. I walked to the office most days past cafes that smelled like espresso and salt air, reminding myself that starting over did not mean starting small. Bennett Rowe Design Group was not my father's firm. No one there cared about my last name. They cared about numbers, performance deadlines. My first month was a trial by fire. 2 major hospitality clients were reconsidering their brand positioning, and I was asked to lead the strategy meetings. On my 3rd week, my supervisor, Allison Grant, called me into her office. "You came highly recommended," she said, folding her hands. "But this market is different. You will have to prove you can handle West Coast clients." "I understand," I replied. "You left a leadership role. Some people will assume you could not maintain it." I met her gaze steadily. "I did not leave because I could not maintain it." She held my eyes a moment longer, then nodded. "Good. Then show me." The pressure felt clean. There were no emotional undercurrents, no unspoken expectations tied to blood or loyalty, just work. In late January, an email from my sister appeared in my inbox. Subject line, "You think you won." I stared at it before opening. "You destroyed everything," she wrote. "Dad had to sell the house. The company is barely surviving. You walked away like none of this mattered. You have always been selfish, Caroline." I read the message twice, looking for something softer hidden between the accusations. There was none. For a moment, I felt the old pull, the instinct to explain, to defend, to soften the narrative. Then I closed the email without responding. Later that week, I received a formal letter from a law office in Charlotte. My father had retained counsel to request contact information for former clients I had personally managed, claiming potential contractual ambiguities. I forwarded the letter to Daniel Park. He called me within an hour. "There is no merit here," he said. "Your non-compete was regional and limited. You are compliant. So this is posturing. Yes, I will respond." 2 days later, he sent a concise reply declining the request and clarifying the scope of my departure. Professional, unemotional. I did not call my father. I did not write back to Lillian. By February, news filtered through mutual contacts. My father had sold the Myers Park house at a reduced price to cover operating losses. Whitmore Design Collective was down to 6 employees. The Winston Hospitality account had permanently moved on. The firm was no longer the dominant name it once had been in the region, but it had not collapsed either. It had simply shrunk. Lillian had taken a part-time position at a home decor showroom in South Park. A friend sent me a photo by accident, thinking I would find it amusing. I did not. I remembered the way she used to talk about lifestyle branding and curated living. I wondered what it felt like to stand behind a register. One evening in March, I found myself thinking about the house on Oak Ridge Drive, the way the afternoon light used to hit the kitchen island, the faint creak of the 3rd stair. I missed it in a distant way, like a song from a different chapter of my life. I did not miss the tension. I did not miss the careful editing of my own needs. At work, I closed a major account for Bennett Rowe. After the final presentation, Allison shook my hand. "You earned this," she said. I walked out of the office that night with a steady sense of something I had not fully allowed before. Autonomy, not the adrenaline of cutting ties, not the relief of legal protection, something quieter. I could choose my boundaries without negotiating them. I could help someone without losing myself. I could love my family without surrendering to them. One afternoon, my father called again. This time I answered. "Caroline," he said, voice measured. "Yes. I heard you secured the Armitage account." "I did." There was a pause. "That is impressive. Thank you." Another pause. "I wanted you to know the firm is stabilizing. Smaller but stable. I am glad to hear that." He cleared his throat. "I never intended for things to escalate." "They did," I said calmly. Silence stretched between us, not hostile, just honest. "I hope you are well," he said finally. "I am." He did not apologize. I did not demand it. When we ended the call, I did not feel anger. I felt the distance of two adults who had finally stopped trying to control each other. That evening, I walked down to the beach alone. The sand was cool under my feet. The horizon blurred into lavender as the sun dropped. I stood there listening to the waves and thought about the version of myself from a year ago. The woman who believed strength meant endurance. The woman who thought protecting everyone else was the same as being good. I had not burned my family to the ground. I had stepped aside. I had not ruined my father. I had refused to be leveraged. I had not abandoned my sister. I had stopped financing her instability. The wind picked up slightly, carrying the sound of distant laughter from the pier. I breathed in salt and let it settle. Peace did not arrive with a speech. It arrived in small confirmations, in mornings without dread, in decisions made without fear. I turned back toward my apartment as the sky darkened, feeling neither victorious nor defeated, just steady. If you have ever had to choose between loyalty to your family and loyalty to yourself, I would genuinely like to know what you chose and why. Leave your thoughts below.